Harken back a little bit to 2 Marches ago when COVID-19 first hit the world, and we knew much less about the virus then, we have to acknowledge, but I think we can also remember how difficult it was for us to send our children home, and how difficult it was for families to manage the learning of their children at home. I know as adults we can agree or disagree whether or not masks should be required or mandated or whatever terminology you want to use. And I know as adults we can have our opinions to either oppose that sort of a mandate and make up our own decisions, or celebrate that sort of a mandate. But I think the thing that we can all agree upon, regardless of where we stand on the use of masks in this instance, is that kids need to be with teachers in order to learn. Kids need to be with teachers in order to best be taken care of during the school day. That's their needs that go, not only learning needs. Learning is the essence of our mission as a school district, right? But it's also needs such as providing lunch, providing health support. We know very deeply the impact of social and emotional learning and having those connections with peers. And so I think, again, as adults, we want to keep kids in classrooms with teachers. That is our goal, and that is our educational mission. The impact when we don't have that is on learning and learning loss. And one of my wise colleagues said, we really won't know the cost of that until years from now. And so it behooves us to make every effort right now to ensure that we are progressing our educational mission and having teachers work directly with kids on a daily basis. That learning loss accumulates over time. Again, we've been in this pandemic for way too long. We're all kind of sick of it and ready to get through it. But at the same time, we do have strategies at our disposal that can allow us to progress our educational mission of teaching and learning. Our family work schedules, once again, are impacted. When our youngsters who require adult care are sent home because of quarantining, because of close contacts, there's an adult whose work schedule is typically affected to be there with that learner. We have to make sure that we keep in mind families and the financial stressors that many of our families felt when that was required of them, again, 2 Marches ago, in an on and off basis from last school year. Our teachers, and we all know that teaching is a beautiful profession, the most rewarding profession, but it's also a stressful profession. And just the logistics of managing the ins and the outs and the homes and the back homes and who's providing what instruction and what platform, it really stretched them last year. And our own staff and our own personnel have their own children. So again, when we're trying to prevent situations like what happened last March when we hit a staff level in which we had to send all students home to learn because we didn't have enough adults working with them, we want to be proactive and ensure that our teachers can remain in the classroom, not just because their own health is protected, but also because their children, that they may have to, their personal children, that they may have to care for at home, aren't sent home on quarantine or isolation.
Thank you, Ms. Galach. In terms of breakfast and lunch and what that will look like, because this is a time that we do demask, and this is a time that students are with each other, perhaps more than 15 minutes at a table. We'll be requesting that students eat in pods, but the beautiful part is they'll have their masks off, and they'll be able to socialize and see each other, smile, cry, whatever they'd like to do during that time. We'll ask our administrators to maintain seating charts for contact tracing purposes because that will be a difficult one to trace if we don't have kids assigned to pods or certain seating. We'll distance wherever possible, and if we know that we can honor that 6-foot distance in some of our places, then contact tracing would not have to happen. And here's kind of the big one. We want to limit visitors during breakfast and lunch, which is at the elementary level. As a former elementary principal, it's usually a big time for parents to come in and have lunch with their kids. But at this time, with the variant and with the spread, we're going to restrict that until we're in a better place with our data. Next slide, please. So decisions moving forward will continue to be made through our Smart Restart Committee, which meets every week. It includes public health, and we'll continue to look at weekly data at the regional level. We'll analyze that data, and we'll be prepared, and we'll mitigate, and we'll respond, and then we'll move into recovery. And sometimes that will be circular. or cyclical because of we just don't know what the next thing might be. And we're hoping there's no next thing after this, after the Delta variant. And the other thing I'll say right now is none of us want to have a mask on. None of us want to have a mask on. It seems that there's a perpetuating thing on social media that this is something that the superintendent really enjoys. And I can tell you right now, the superintendent doesn't enjoy this at all. It would be my preference that none of us would ever have to wear a mask again. But we want to keep people safe, and that's the reason for the request today. Some of the strategies that we used and refined from last year, how we're going to deal with students who are quarantining and how we make sure that there's still some rigor to the work when they're outside of school, how we can provide outreach and support to families who really depend on us. In other words, how can we use technology to make that experience really rich? Because we did learn some things last year, and there might be some new things on the horizon for us as well. And then there's the potential for remoting in for teachers who might still feel well enough to teach. We experienced that last year, and that worked really well. As long as we had supervision in a classroom, then teachers were able to teach remotely. Next slide, please. So the decision making that we'll use will continue to use the Grand Forks County 19 data dashboard. And again, the transmission level is a new data point for us. If people are wondering, well, how long will we have masks on? It's hard to put a defined ending date to that. But my goal would be the sooner we get our masks off, the better for all of us. But we will have data driving those decisions. So right now, we're in the highest transmission level in red. Our community has moved from green to yellow. If we could drop those categories down, then we will continue to look at that from a Smart Restart committee weekly meeting and make those adjustments. We want to make sure as those data points pivot and drop, and my hope is that things drop, we want to be in those drop zones for 10 days before we make a decision. We don't want to make a hard, fast decision overnight because the color's changed. The other piece is we're hopeful and optimistic that our youngest kids who are not eligible for the vaccine, who are looking forward to it, my son included, when that does become available, we'll probably have more students who will be vaccinated at that at that K through 5 level. Next slide, please. This brings us to the final slide and the administrative recommendation. And the recommendation is for masks to be required for all individuals age 2 or older inside of Grand Forks Public School facilities or Grand Forks Public Schools leased facilities effective Monday, August 23rd, 2021. And again, the recommendation for this purpose, to echo what Ms. Kalach said earlier, to take proactive measures to maintain our educational mission of teaching and learning by keeping students and staff in the buildings, as opposed to the possibility of large numbers of quarantining situations, growing learning gaps, and parents missing work. And some of the supporting evidence, I shouldn't say some, the supporting evidence for this would be the health officer's dashboard as of yesterday. We're currently at the yellow level as a community, and the transmission indicators are currently at the highest level. Again, the Smart Restart Committee will continue to meet weekly, monitor community and district-wide COVID data, and will make adjusted recommendations accordingly. And that's our report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Brenner and others. I'm going to switch things around. Usually I open it up right away for questions and comments, and I go last, but I'm going to actually go first this time, and then I'll open it up after that. First, I want to apologize for not being here on Monday. At the beginning of our district calendar year, I picked my vacations the weeks there were no school board meetings, so hence I went on vacation this week and then found out last week we were going to have a meeting on Monday, and I should have, in retrospect, just canceled my vacation and stayed here, so I apologize I was not here on Monday. I can tell you there's a lot of rain coming up. I drove in here this morning and I was in nonstop rain, going only 50 miles an hour most of the way from Fargo. So we've got some rain coming, more rain coming. So I apologize for that. I do want to talk a little bit about masks, because we've heard so much about masks from everybody, and I think there's a common misconception out there. The misconception is that masks don't stop the COVID virus, and that's true. It doesn't. If I spew out an isolated COVID virus out of my mouth, this mask will not stop it. But this mask was never designed to stop a small particle like a virus. N95s do a really good job, but they're not even 100%. The purpose of masks is to stop the secretions that are spread. And it sounds gross, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. We're always spewing out small secretion drops, some of them microscopic, some of them a little more than microscopic, all the time. And those secretions in somebody who's infected with COVID-19 will have the virus in it. The purpose of these kinds of masks, the mask Doug's wearing, Dr. Wallace is wearing, are designed to stop those secretions from coming out. They aren't going to stop an isolated little virus that's microns in diameter. So the purpose for masks is not to stop 100% of the virus going on. It's to stop those secretions. If you or your family want to be protected completely from COVID and have zero risk, I would suggest you move to Denali in Alaska and be in a bubble, because that's the only way you're going to completely eliminate the risk. What we're talking about, what public health has talked about, what everybody's been talking about since the pandemic, is how do we reduce, how do we mitigate the risk? There's no way to eliminate it completely. And there's no question in my mind that masks work to decrease the risk. They don't eliminate it, but they decrease it. So there's no question in my mind. There's also no question in my mind that there are downside effects of masks. We can't ignore that. There are downside effects of having kids wear masks. I think primarily, and the education experts in the room can tell me more than anything, I think it's the communication issues. There's no question. So I think we need to be aware that there are downsides of masks in addition to benefits of masks. And my philosophy on masks is very similar to my philosophies on vaccinations. We all were asked by the Herald reporter our vaccination status, and I freely told him I was vaccinated. And I told him my philosophy on vaccinations is a simple mathematical equation. What are the risks of getting the vaccination versus what are the risks of getting the disease? And you weigh the two. It's the same thing with masks. What are the risks of wearing the masks? And what are the benefits of wearing the masks? In my mind, there's no question that there are benefits from wearing masks that far outweigh the risks. So what's happened over the last month is we've noticed, like everybody else, our numbers are going up locally. The one thing I do not like about the national media and all that is everybody has a tendency to generalize to their own area. And to be honest, what's been happening in Florida and Texas and Arkansas and Mississippi is not happening in North Dakota. They're going up, but it's not to the degree that it is elsewhere. The concerning thing is now over the last month, and especially over the last 2 weeks, the numbers have continued to rise in Grand Forks County, which is our area. And as Dr. Brenner talked about, we're in the red when it comes to transmission. So I'm certainly in favor of mandating masks at this time. I'm also in favor of getting rid of the mandate as soon as we feel the risk has been mitigated and there's less risk. Because, and I'll give you, and I'm sorry I'm so preachy today, but I guess because I was sitting at the lake makes me think about things, reading lots of emails. Here's my philosophy on what's going to happen with COVID, and nobody knows for sure. Nobody in the world knows what's going to happen down the road with COVID-19. But my thoughts, and I mirror a lot of experts' thoughts, is the pandemic is going to go away at some point, and we're going to have endemic COVID-19, which means we're going to have low levels of COVID, like other coronaviruses that cause common colds, like the flu. I doubt it's going to go completely away. It's probably not going to be like smallpox where we can eliminate it. It'll probably be low level, but it's probably going to be here to stay. And when you compare it to influenza, the best way to mitigate our risk for influenza is vaccination. It's vaccination, and it's not going to probably be any different with COVID-19. It's going to be, vaccination is going to be our best weapon to try and minimize the disease as much as possible. Unfortunately, as Dr. Brenner showed with the numbers, and all of you know well through the press, that there's a large part of our population that can't be vaccinated yet with the 12 and under. Unfortunately, there's a fair percentage of people above 12 that haven't been vaccinated, and that will never be vaccinated. But that's their right and choice at this time. So I think I'm certainly in favor of mandating masks right now. I think we should look at when can we go back to being recommended, because I don't think we can say, well, this whole year we're going to be in masks. We don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We just don't know yet. So I appreciate public health being here. Dr. Walls, I want to thank you. I want to thank your team that's here, but your whole team, that for all the tireless work that all of you have been done over the last 18 months. Have you guys gotten everything right? No. But we haven't gotten everything right. The CDC hasn't, the federal government, nobody has. What we've done is we've made the best decisions we can make at the time with the information we have. And I can tell you there's a heck of a lot more information now than there was 18 months ago. And so I applaud you for those decisions. And another little fact that most of the board doesn't know, but the health officer before Dr. Walls was Dr. Lund, and so I kind of know what he's going through. So I didn't have a pandemic during my reign, but we had enough issues of forcing people out of their homes because of hoarding and stuff like that. So again, thank you, Dr. Walls, and thank your team that's here and the rest of the team that's not here. So I will get off my soapbox and I will open it up if any board members have any clarifying questions or comments about what's been presented. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is we talk mask mandate in school. Are we talking no mask at recess if they're outside, or no mask at lunch hour when the kids go out to play?
Thank you, Mr. Palmasino. That would be correct. It's just for inside, and then we would loosen that restriction during lunch, and when they're outside, they're demasked.
My other question is, personally, I just think, we got two sides that are very strong in their feelings, as we read, and I would like us, I know Doug tried last time to set a date that if we decide a mask mandate, that we look at this more in depth at a board meeting, not to say that the committee will come back when it's ready, but we can look at numbers and that, and I'm not, I guess personally, I would think that it's somewhat of a compromise for people that, don't want masks at all. But if we could set a date like October 11th, that would be our first meeting in October. We look at it. Kids are in school for roughly 4 or 5 weeks, and we'll know that. So those are just my feelings.
Thanks, Bill.